Hello and welcome to this week's episode of QTV. And wow, have we got a great program coming up.
We'll be chatting to Peter Tatchell, the Australian activist who spent much of his time in London and did lots of great work to further gay rights.
And we've got all the excitement and groups taking part in the Pride March.
Nicole Kalms from the Monash University XYX Lab talked to us about their innovative gender mapping and just what is going on in terms of gender and queer-friendly public places.
And we delve into the past to take a look at a cheeky kiss-in from the 1970s in Collins Street, where the use of kissing isn't what it's normally used for, which is enjoyment, but in this case, it was a protest.
Peter, do you have any memories of Gay News, the publication?
I have many memories of Gay News, and of course it grew out of the Gay Liberation Front in 1972. I was one of a group of people with Dennis Lemon, who later became the editor, who met in somebody's flat in Kensington High Street to plan and plot this idea of creating a gay community newspaper. That must have been late 71, early 72. And, you know, we had this vision of a community newspaper that would be able to communicate and provide a means of information and news to the LGBTI community. We reasoned that you can't win a campaign for equality, you can't challenge and defeat homophobia without informing the mass of LGBTI people about what's going on, and that Gay News could be a focus for news and information, but also for mobilizing people, for informing them about protests and campaigns to engage them. And it was a fantastic, groundbreaking, very professionally produced publication, and I've got great admiration for all the other people who were involved in those early stages and subsequently.
Have you any favourite memories of Gay News?
Lots. One of them is the first ever article they published by me, I think it was in 1972. I had gone to a London medical group seminar addressed by Professor Hans Eysenck, who at the time was one of the world's leading psychologists. And he was, with other speakers, advocating or justifying electric shock and nausea-inducing therapies to turn gay people straight. He was saying it was just like a visit to the dentist, that the pain and discomfort was totally exaggerated, and that people should be able to have this option of treatment to deal with, I think you call it, the homosexual problem. So I disrupted the speakers, particularly Eysenck, and then wrote up the report for Gay News. But there's a good example how a small isolated protest got national coverage and alerted thousands and thousands of LGBTI people who, without Gay News, would have never known what Eysenck said or the protest that I mounted against him.
A couple more questions. What do you think may be Gay News' greatest legacy?
Well, Gay News was the pioneer of the LGBTI press in Britain. So it laid the groundwork, it established the benchmark, and it was a very, very high benchmark of quality professional journalism. It was very slickly produced, very attractive, and that's what made it, so readable, so accessible, and so widely read. People read Gay News every fortnight because they wanted to know what was going on, and Gay News gave them the information they needed. It gave them information about what the homophobes were doing and saying, and what we were doing in response. And so it helped to galvanise and conscientise tens of thousands of LGBTI people.
And how do you think gay news compares to the LGBTQI media today?
Well, of course, gay news was a print media. It was a fortnightly newspaper magazine, very different from the mostly online publications that now exist. I think in terms of its journalism, the standards were very, very high. The standards of journalism in gay news competed with the best of Fleet Street. Not the tabloids and the trashy Fleet Street, but the quality Fleet Street, the quality national newspapers, in terms of its accuracy, news values and content.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, gay news was a great read. I used to, every fortnight rush out to get a copy because, you knew that in every issue there'd be, really important news and information. There'd be lots of entertaining features. It helped, if you like, begin or regularize the output of LGBTI information and culture. So it had a great impact in influencing the conscience of the LGBTI community, the awareness of the LGBTI community, and the motivation to change things by the LGBTI community. So it was both a source of information and an instrument of change.
What a great piece of work Peter Tatchell and his colleagues from the Gay News were doing to really educate people and let them know what was happening in the queer community right back in the 70s. But now we're going to take a look at something a bit more modern. This year's Pride March that took place in St Kilda with some fantastic costumes on a wonderful sunny day.
Have fun everyone, yep. Happy Pride!
It's our first Pride, which is pretty cool.
We're marching with -18.
My first march, so it's going to be interesting.
We're Victorian sheriffs.
Support all our LGBTI patients.
We're marching with WorkSafe Victoria today.
We're Swinburne
Queen Department.
The Nomads. Outdoors group.
Performing older women's circus.
We have been in every Pride march.
I'm marching with RMIT today.
The first time a group from the Pacific diaspora is marching.
That is such a hurtful, wrong, frankly, it is an absolutely disgraceful way to approach what should be about inclusion and acceptance and valuing people just for being who they are. We will, in an Australian first, outlaw the practice of gay conversion. We think that is the right thing to do. That's the sort of leadership that Victorians expect of their government.
I have Powerade and water, and I think the flag is sun protection.
We left the rest of our habits behind because it's so hot today. So we decided we were just going to wear the overcoats.
Yeah. How do we know if H is lined up?
Okay.
What a wonderful attendance. I can't believe it. That day was 40 degrees and so many people turned up looking fabulous, at least in the beginning from what I saw. I'm not sure how they were at the end of the day, but such a wonderful turnout.
A great day. Now we're going to take a look at some very interesting work from the Monash University XYX Lab, where Nicole Kalms is looking at how you can map gender equality in public places through use of a social mapping device. Let's take a look at this.
You've been working on a very interesting piece of work. You have developed a gender equality and inequality real-time interactive map.
That is correct.
Now, what the hell does all that mean?
So I work at the Monash University XYX Lab, and we're a research lab that's dedicated to thinking about gender and urban spaces and places. And with CrowdSpot, which is a mapping, social equity mapping organisation, we've been contracted by the Victorian State Government to pilot this gender equality map. And it's really thinking about how Victorians can plot different locations and experiences of gender equality and inequality.
So all genders?
Mm-hmm. All genders, which is quite remarkable and we think, from what we can tell, a world first.
Wow. Mm. And have you actually done some work in trying to define genders?
Well, look, at the moment, the way that the Victorian State Government is thinking about this is that we know that local governments and councils really need to think very carefully about what gender might mean in their communities. And we've seen a lot of work, particularly around women and girls, but not really something that has addressed broadly LGBTI communities and also all ages as well. So I think that we're really interested to uncover what the communities themselves and how they see gender in their communities. And at the moment it's being piloted in Darebin and Milton, with the idea that it could roll out through the whole of Victoria. So we're focused on those communities at the moment and the gendered experiences in those communities. It does surface stories that we haven't heard before, and that's a really important part of what this can do. This morning I jumped onto the map to have a look at what people were announcing, particularly about LGBTI examples that I could kind of bring in this morning. And and I should say that it's a live map, so we can all see what other people are saying, and you can comment and agree and disagree with particular people. But some of the things I pulled out...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can... What's wonderful is that you can actually see other people's comments, and so there were a lot more in Darebin than in Milton, which I think is probably not surprising. And one of the really interesting things about the project is that very different two communities that we're working with the pilot on. So a couple of examples that I pulled out in Darebin was someone commenting on a particular program that was a music program for young people that seemed to focus on all genders, which they thought was very, very positive. Another example was that the Reservoir Leisure Centre had particular kinds of swim nights that were trans-inclusive, and they felt that that was a very positive aspect of that. There are lots of comments where there are non-binary bathrooms, and also lots of comments where there are not non-binary bathrooms. So these are the kinds of issues that people are plotting. So you can see that relationship between public amenity and urban places, because you were asking about how will government and local government, federal government use this information. And so I'm by training an architect, and the people in my laboratory are designers and architects and urban researchers, and so our job is to actually synthesise all this data. So we look for tendencies, hotspots. It's not about single stories, but about finding agreement and collaboration of particular stories, because then what we do is we say, here you go, let's advocate for this kind of change. We think you should spend the money like this. So this is the kind of advocacy that I think this kind of data can do. I think that there's a great capacity for us to really advocate for thinking about gender and public places and spaces. You don't have to live in the area, you can work there or just move through.
How can they participate in populating data? So
you can just search gender equality map or go to vic.gov gender equality map, and it's really simple. You don't have to make a password or anything, you just plot experiences and stories.
What an interesting way to get the public involved in how our open spaces are organised.
I think it's a fascinating new tool, very interesting. But finally, we're going to take a look back in time now and just how the power of a kiss can change public opinion, from the Woolshed bar kissing in the 1970s.
Kissing. It's not just for fun. In late 1979, a group of about 100 women and men gathered outside the Hotel Australia in Collins Street in Melbourne and started immediately to engage in same-sex pashing in a very public way. Police, gathered on the other side of the road, watched impassively. This event was an odder one than we might first think, because it involved a very political act, kissing in public, and was intended as a protest. The Hotel Australia had been discreetly welcoming to camp men and women since at least the 1930s. By the 1970s, it was very much a part of Melbourne's gay scene. Upstairs was a fairly swish sort of bar, suits and ties and top-shelf liquor. Downstairs, the bar properly known as the Woolshed was more informally known as the Snake Pit, and it was home to rough trade and those who admired them. Unlike the bar staff, who were very welcoming, the owners weren't very keen on this clientele, and after various efforts to remodel the place to discourage them from coming, they decided to give up and just close the place once and for all. Word spread, and on the last night of the Woolshed, a crowd of exuberant gay people gathered for one last hurrah. It was a very raucous event, there was a little bit of souveniring, but the police didn't really have much to do. That is, until Terry Stokes and Darren Turner decided to call it a night. They left, and at the top of the stairs they stopped to kiss each other goodnight. A policeman loitering nearby described the kiss as very passionate, as involving tongue and lasting for at least 15 seconds. They were arrested for offensive behaviour, charged, taken to court and convicted. Hence the public passion, the kiss-in at the Woolshed bar, which was intended to be an assertion of gay and lesbian visibility and their right to be treated with respect and like everybody else. Up at Melbourne Uni, things took an even uglier turn. Terry Stokes was expelled from his college. More protests followed, including a motion from a stop work meeting of CAF workers and a letter from the Vice-Chancellor assuring everybody that the university did not countenance discrimination of any kind. A new world was coming in the late 1970s for lesbians and gay men. They were more confident, more inclined to believe that they had rights, and more inclined to stand up for them. And in the wider world, from CAF workers to Vice-Chancellors, those rights were increasingly respected.
What a beautiful, peaceful way to raise awareness about inequality.
It's all in a kiss, Tess.
And love trumps all.
Exactly. But that's the end of our show for today. We had a great catch-up with Peter Tatchell, who talked about his work on gay news. We then looked at the wonderful Pride March that took place in St Kilda. We talked to Nicole Kalms from Monash University about the XYX Lab. And finally, we looked at the Woolshed and that kiss. But join us again next week because we'll have more QTV for you.
It should be about inclusion and acceptance and valuing people just for being who they are. We will, in an Australian First, outlaw the practice of gay conversion. We think that is the right thing to do. That's the sort of leadership that Victorians expect of their government.